Hi, my name is Swapan Seth, and I'm extremely pleased to present the first edition of Sona Comcast. Sona Comcast aspires to be a platform where we will showcase engaging conversations between people from diverse backgrounds and engaging interests. And in the very first edition, I'm delighted to welcome two individuals of great stature in their various fields. There is Arun Kapur, who's a renowned educationist, not just in India, but now even in Bhutan. And of course, Sunjay Kapur, an astute businessman, a wonderful parent, and a brilliant sportsman. The topic for today's discussion is going to be the business of education. And in this conversation, whilst one is acutely aware of the fact that business and education have had a long lineage, have had a long relationship, we wish to re-examine the relationship between the two of them through the eyes of a contemporary businessman and a renowned educationist. So without much ado, let's start the conversation. And thank you, Sanjay, for joining us from England, and Arun from Bhutan. So we have the people from all parts of the world to speak to us today. And today we're discussing the business of education. And there's enormous legacy in the entire topic, because business and education have had great linkages across the world. And even in India, we've seen various business houses invest in education. But I just wanted a different perspective, a more modern contemporary perspective between a contemporary businessman and a renowned educationist. So without much ado, I'm going to start the conversation. I'm going to jump in and out of it. I'm going to leave it rather free-flowing, as it must be. So the question to you, Arun, really is, what does education expect out of business?
What does education expect out of business? That's a really wide kind of question. What does education? The thing is that when you try and differentiate or kind of demarcate between education and business, you're going to have a bit of a trouble, because they overlap constantly, right? To kind of make them into two different buckets from which one is to expect something from the other would be difficult. In some parts of the world, fortunately, unfortunately, doesn't matter, education is business. You know, there are many institutions that are run as businesses. And then there are many parts of the world where educational institutions don't necessarily run for profit, but they have to run efficiently, like a business, to be able to sustain themselves. And there are many businesses, Sanjay being one of the representatives, who come in to help sustain an education institution, right? So, but I also want to take education out of institutions, and anybody growing up nowadays, and like I have said on some other occasions, that the whole part of this is growing up, you know, from a child when somebody is born and they grow up to become to become adults, and then beyond, you know, while you're alive. Education is very much part of who you are and who you're growing up to be, and the world and the society in which you grow up, whether as a child or a teenager or as an adult, is many ways the whole environment is kind of set by businesses. So that is where I'm looking at, if anything education is looking for from business, is a kind of society in which children are growing up to become adults. What is ethics, what is required, what is competition, what is success. The biggest thing that education would require from business is this definition of what is success. If they are able to kind of say that this is success very clearly, then any education path will know that, and that keeps changing as we go along. It's evolutionary. What is success? So there, some kind of a definition or a help to understand what is success is what I think education would expect from business in a way. For me, that would be the most important thing that would come through.
And Sanjay, what does business expect out of education?
Thanks, Swapan. And I'll just follow on from what Mr. Kapur ended and say that, what's becoming really important today is the industry-academia connect. The connection between industry and academia in terms of whether they be educational institutes at the formal level or the primary level, or later on in college, and then even graduate schools. What we're looking for is multiple things that need to come out of this. One is the end product or the student, and how well-rounded is the student and how prepared is the student that comes into business. The other thing that business looks for is the research aspect of academia. There's a great amount of research and potential for research from academia that business can leverage. So these are, two parts which are very important. Of course, going to defining success, etc., are other aspects of it, as Mr. Kapur touched upon. However, for us in industry, it's very important to have that connection so that we can leverage the talent base that exists in educational institutes. And again, I want to touch upon research because that's become extremely important for industry to see how we can, evolve our businesses in this disruptive environment. So give you an example, in the automotive industry or the auto component industry, we align with several educational institutes like IITs and IIMs to see how we can, build upon the research that they've already done, take on new projects in association with component manufacturers and the component industry, so that we can leverage the talent pool that they have, the research base that we have. There's also a responsibility, I feel, from businesses to invest in education and invest in infrastructure for education, so that education institutes can really, grow to the potential that they have. So that's really, my primary, my first response to this. We can, expand upon.
Well, the other thing, Sanjay, thanks. I just feel that there is also a huge space where business, as you're calling it, comes in to help the faculty in educational institutions grow. It's not just the students that would come out, because if we are looking for students to come out of whatever formal, informal growth situations, then the people who are helping them, the faculty, and if there is a connect between the faculty and industry and business to learn, so the research part that you're talking about, I think for the faculty to learn how businesses work, right? To figure out what is efficiency, what matters, right? In thing, what is it that you're looking for? That aspect is another aspect that I feel that business and education can look at, how to make sure that the faculty is constantly growing. Because if they are not growing, they are not going to be able to help the students and the young minds grow. So that is another, I think, great connect that can happen. It happens in some places, but not as much as I think should happen at the connect between the faculty. Again, a little bit of a difference in terms that I would like to clarify as we go along. There is this whole aspect of schooling, right? Where schools themselves have become a business and they are an end in itself. So I'm happy that we're using the word education rather than schooling. And therefore, it's an unending kind of continuum that goes on. And that move for faculty, from students to coming in, internships, and also for people from businesses to come across as faculty. That is another huge connect that can happen, that when from the real world, as you represent, people come in to educational institutions to share with them the successes. Again, I'm going back into that situation and the hard work that is required. So one is research, the content, but also the attitude, the resilience, the what unfortunately are some places called softer aspects. I think they are the real hard aspects of education, because the content is constantly going to change. And that's where that connect would come. I would like to add that aspect also.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right in that the faculty is really the lead, and that there's also a scarcity of faculty, and therefore training institutes with regard to training of faculty. Just to add to that, there's also a lot of skilling requirements in terms of what business is required today. With the disruption in every industry, the kind of skill sets we need are very different from what we are, currently used to. To give you an example of automation, Industry 4.0, these are all, while there may be buzzwords today, these are all realities in business today. And how do you manage people, and how do you bring the right people in? And therefore, skilling becomes very important as well. So there's a very interesting institute called Steinbeis, which actually works with businesses. And what happens is that they appoint a faculty, and the faculty's chosen students to research projects for industry, and then faculty and the students together, solve that problem, or address that project, and find a solution, and then pass it back on to industry. And then, of course, there are multiple ways of looking at IP, etc. But that's the way that the industry is going, and that's the way to success, in my view.
But when I'm hearing both of you, and I'm thinking that we're talking about a larger Malay in the system. In my view, and please contradict it if you feel otherwise, but in my view, that the Malay is in the basic system of education in this country. When you talk about skilling, when you talk about research, when you talk about soft skills, all of these are absolutely pointed and very, very vital skills. But Arun, they find no place in the curriculum that is offered in our country. And I would love to hear your perspective, because you're one of the rare people who's been able to author a curriculum, and author a curriculum not just for a country like Bhutan, but also a curriculum which is now being adopted by universities in various parts of Europe. So how do you feel that we as a country, how do we change? How do we build into the system the basic requirements that both you and Sunjay are talking about? I mean, clearly both of you are extremely, what shall I say, a bit disappointed by the kind of curriculum and education that we have in our country.
Okay, so the thing is that there are various aspects to what you call a curriculum, right? There is this whole aspect which are what I call domain specific, like maths and physics and chemistry. But there are these other larger aspects of a curriculum, which I've been talking about, and the 5 areas that has been looked at. Again, skills, processes, and watermarks. Those, again, the word skills comes in here. But skills can only remain skills for a while. Then you need to go beyond skills. You need to understand the process of learning. And if your curriculum is based only on content, and as we progress, content, if it becomes obsolete, and if you're completely dependent on content, you become obsolete really, really fast. But on the other hand, if you've learned skills of learning, right, the process of learning, the how to learn rather than the what to learn, and the why to learn, if you've got those two together with you, then the what to learn will keep changing. And now with artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, machine learning, all those kind of things, the content is something that you can gather and then taking that aspect when you're talking about our country in specific, I think the NEP, the new education policy, looks at this very clearly. They've done a lot of work, they've done a lot of research, and I think it's a very well produced, but it needs to be now implemented. So there is hope, there is things going forward, but these machines turn very slowly, but they grind fast. But also just to kind of add also, going back a little bit to the curriculum and the business education collaboration, that's what I like to see, rather than them as two polar ends. They're the collaborations. Business can create avenues to get involved in economic activities, right? Not only in financial terms, but also shall we say, in the situation of ideas, like what Sanjay was saying, that the research part that they can use. To just give an example of where we do a lot of work with Finland, if you look at the city of Helsinki, right? The city has become an educational city, right? Where schools partner with businesses, right? For students to get involved in the functioning of the city itself, right? And that is just so fascinating to watch. It's the real life, what I called, where Sanjay comes from the real world. So if you keep the students away in this artificial bubble inside the school and keep them away from everything else, and there are certain things that you want to keep them away from, which are not the nice things, but at the same time, we need to make sure that they are involved in the actual world that they live in. And that collaboration through business and education is just a fascinating idea, which we see in reality in Helsinki. And if it can happen there, if it just needs a little bit more involvement where the businesses demand this and they create this opportunity. And then when you're saying that this curriculum, if you just go away from the normal understanding of the word curriculum and we look at the learning scale, right, where they need to learn and they have to get on with their hands, getting involved in how to run buses and how to run medical institutes and how to get an understanding. That's where I think the collaboration between business and education, constantly learning from each other, working together, that is the curriculum that I would love to be able to see. And that curriculum never stops at the end of school or end of college or end of business school. I'm sure that Sanjay is constantly learning. I know for a fact that he's constantly learning. The world is changing and he has to have that sense of learning. And that's what I feel very strongly, that we need to move away from the aspect of teaching, right, to go into this world of learning. For me, learning is what it's all about. And if your curriculum constantly wants, whether you're 30 years old or 13 years old, if it demands of you, and then you make your own curriculum, that's, for me, is what, and it's very, very happening in many places in our country too. And therefore, when you talk of a curriculum, Chopin, and Sanjay knows this very well, each school, each little bubble can create a curriculum for itself, but then that curriculum can suck all the oxygen out, right? And if it sees, that's why I'm going back to the idea of success. If you are going to be noting your success by the number of marks you get in an examination, and that's your only criteria, you're sunk. But the fact of the matter is, and that's where people like Sanjay, when they work with Ashoka or various other institutions, where they look for things beyond marks. But the problem is you need that marks to open the door. So that curriculum has to be a mixed bag where you do get the marks to kind of prove that you have resilience, not marks just over that you regurgitated some of the stuff that you learned, but you have resilience, you have the ability to take risks. All these things are very much part of a curriculum, maybe unsaid, but I think that's what a curriculum is all about.
So I love that, because I think you're talking about content being irrelevant because content has no context. And you're saying that the context is far more critical than the content. I'll just shift it a bit and speak to Sanjay about and understand a bit more about what led him to have these scholarships for STEM students at Ashoka and particularly for women. I mean, and what drove you there? Because Ashoka, you don't have, you have certain corporations and you have certain individuals from business who form the backbone of the university. But there's not much really happening in terms of, a business house actually saying that I'm going to look at STEM scholars. I'm going to look at lady STEM scholars. What drove you in that direction?
So
because
Chopin,
really your first foray into looking at education from an extremely scientific and serious perspective.
I think, the best way or the best answer for this is what Mr. Kapur started off with in how to learn. That is the most important thing that we're looking for. Because, as he's rightly saying, content can change. And you said it too, with the disruption that's going on, content changes all the time. So how to learn becomes very important. For us, I think Ashoka is an institute that's really doing great stuff in the area of liberal arts, in the area of engineering and mathematics as well. And that's really where we're focused in terms of our sponsorship on sponsoring or supporting women in the field of engineering mathematics, because we believe that there's not enough women in that field. In our industry, the number of women is very, very sort of, it's very small in terms of what it should be and what it could be, because there's a lot of talent out there, and therefore we want to support that, and we want to support women. And engineering and mathematics is obviously very closely related to our industry. However, I like the way that Ashoka is set up in terms of their liberal arts program. I like the fact that we're talking about how to learn being so much more important than what you're learning, because learning is a lifelong process. It doesn't end at the end of school or the end of college or MBA. And as Mr. Kapur rightly said, we're learning every day. There are executive education programs that sort of train you on brand new things that you've never learned when doing your undergrad or grad school, and because everything is changing so fast. I remember having a conversation with Mr. Kapur, in fact, I want to say about 3 years ago, where we talked about how to learn not relevant to a subject matter, but then putting the subject matter in the how to learn part of it. So you're learning physics or you're learning chemistry in a completely different way, because you learn first how to learn and then you put the subjects in there. And it was a very interesting conversation. Maybe you want to expand upon that. Do you remember that conversation we had at the airport?
Yes, very quick.
On the way to
so there were yeah, so there was another, I just want to take that, we're talking about conversations at airports. Sanjay and I met at Delhi airport many years ago, and we were sitting around just waiting for something or the other. And I remember that conversation. I don't know whether Sanjay remembers this or not, but talking about, and this was a long time ago, when he talked about what was going to be and I'd asked, what's the future hold for us? And he had mentioned something. He said, cars for rent are going to be the future, and this is way beyond Uber and Yelp and whatever else it is. So that is the kind of things that we want, people like Sanjay who think way beyond tomorrow, not today, not forget tomorrow. And that aspect for me is the most important aspect of looking beyond and thinking big. And talking about what we are saying just now, the taking of subject, physics or chemistry or maths, for a long time in our system, the learning of mathematics was the end, right? For us now, it has to be the learning of mathematics is the process by which you learn how to learn, right? And therefore, you use domains like subjects, not as an end of learning those subjects, but as a means to learn how to learn, because you have to have something that helps you to learn around, something that has indicators of success, how you're getting along. But what is success for you has to be the learning process itself, right? The learning process is the most crucial aspect. And therefore, you use these subjects to learn how to learn. And then as society progresses, as research, as Sanjay has talked about, takes physics to the next level, as research takes us to understand, again, I'm going into this whole thing about artificial intelligence, and that's what I'm kind of working on, technology and how it takes you into the next level. You are using these things to learn the next step, rather than these being the end. The other thing which I'd like to quickly bring in here is something that is very big with me, is the role of community, right, in the learning process, because that's where we live. That's where it's all about. Are we contributing to our community, whatever your definition of community may be, right? It's your home. You start with your home, your neighborhood, your country, your region. What are you vested in? Once and how is the community helping you become the best that you can be? And one of the things that we here in Bhutan, was put forward as the point of education is to help people become contributory, citizens of a just and harmonious society. So what are you growing up to? What is your goal? If it's and that is this interplay between business, education and society is for me, a very, very exciting situation. That what are you working towards? Are you working towards becoming a creative, constructive citizen of a just and harmonious society? How are you helping a society becoming just and harmonious? Are you working towards that? Whether you do that by putting up a big industry, right? That is also a very important aspect. Or do you work in the industry? Do you help industry grow? And that, going back to what Sunjay said, is that you use that to help to learn, to go to the next level of learning. If you put learning at the center of who you are, right, then everything, I think, is just marvelous. And when I see what is going on, and I'm so happy to hear that people like Sunjay are going out and creating opportunities for people to become constructive citizens of the society by providing scholarships. That means if you're providing a scholarship, that means you're creating a space for people who might not have been able to afford to do this in terms of financial terms, right? That, I think, is just so crucial. And where do you get those people from? Where do you get the money from? What do you want from them? If they get a scholarship, which you have provided, what do you want from them? I would love to see if Sunjay is saying, hey, listen, here's a scholarship, go and learn and become a constructive contributory citizen of the community that you live in a way that makes us all just so much better. That would be just, and I'm sure that is part of what he's looking at.
Yeah. So Sunjay. Just to add there, in business, we call it, what is our purpose? Yeah. That's what we call it. What's the purpose of our organization? Why do we exist? One part of it is, of course, to build a product. But the other part is, what are we doing for community? What are we doing back for our entire community? And that's why we call, what is our purpose? So very, very well said there. Just to add to that, we're also constantly sponsoring, we call it scholarships or sponsors, people who are in the organization who want to get educated. So that's another aspect of, how we can take it to another level, because again, we need to keep educating ourselves. So there will be obviously always a gap that needs to be fulfilled. So can someone who's in our organization go out there and get another, get an education degree, whether they want to get a degree or just a course or a program? And again, training, we call it training, or we call it, education programs become very important for talent, even for retention, even to enhance the talent and the capabilities within the organization for success and for progress. So all very important.
So just responding to that again, what is a huge space, not only in industry but also in education, where the people in the middle, right, who came out of educational institutions a couple of years ago, right? And the world has changed. The kind of skills that you require now are completely different than the one that they came. And they came in successfully, otherwise they wouldn't be with you. But now you need, so when you're talking about skills that you were talking about, and I'm saying getting hold of processes, even in schools, a teacher who's teaching physics and has been teaching physics for a long time, there are new things happening in physics every day. So where does she or he learn those new things if there's no opportunity for them to learn the new things about physics, because they're constantly putting out what they learned when they were in university, right? And the kids now have access to a whole bunch of information. It's coming to us. We are speaking on in 2 different countries, 3 different countries. We are speaking. All these things now bring everybody together, and opportunities for people to go to that next level, constantly learning. So when an industrialist like you has created learning opportunities for people who are working in the organization, right, is so crucial. It's the same mindset that is required in educational institutions, where the people who are faculty members, right, they need to constantly upgrade their knowledge, their content, and their understanding of learning, because that's changing too. And with the rise of technology, right, and we are talking about artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, machine learning, all these things are changing the whole landscape of learning, right?
And I think that's why your initial point of how to learn becomes so important.
Yeah, and that's what holds you, even when you're 35 years old, of age, right? If you have that in you, the constant desire to learn, and you know how to learn, because it has to be contextualized to you. How you learn, an individual, is very different from the person next door, right? That contextualization becomes crucial. And then people like you can help create context. And that's what Swapan had just now said earlier. The creating of context, of creating of opportunities and spaces for individuals to find ways of learning constantly growing up, whether it's in the work environment, whether it's the university. That's why I keep talking about the faculty has to be able to learn and have those opportunities. So one of the things that would be nice, I would love to see, is scholarships from you for faculty, right? So that would be some way that would just change the whole situation, where the focus is only on the students coming out, but those students need forward-looking, constantly learning faculty, right? What are the opportunities being created for the faculty to constantly be learning? And once they are on the learning journey, they will take the students along with them. But on the other hand, if the faculty is kind of standing still here and you're expecting the students to go along on that growth pattern, then there will be some kind of a friction there. But if these both are working together, like I'm saying again with business and education, if the faculty and the students work together to learn, that is what's happening now. Younger and younger and younger people have so much to contribute. And if I, as a faculty member, am I open my mind to learn from the students, right? And constantly they have so much, there will be so many things that they are much better at. Then I will even get to know. And if I'm able to reverse that whole situation of getting into a situation of learning, and that's the same thing in industry. There are so many people coming into industry with this high desire to learn, and they have the opportunity that you create for them to constantly learn, right? You're only, the society and community are going to benefit. So that aspect of working together constantly, like this is fascinating. And when people like you are happy to create spaces for learning for both faculty and students, and for industry and for community, that coming together of the learning part. And then somehow we will also learn the coming together of learning that, hey, all of us contribute to learn from each other. And that's where the strong sense of community comes in. And that's, I think, sorry.
Absolutely. And I absolutely agree with your point on faculty learning, sponsorship, scholarships for faculty, and even just the opportunity to expose them to industry. That gives them the context, because what happens very often is, in a research scenario, you're able to build a product that you cannot productionize or you cannot commercialize, and that always becomes the problem area. So to solve that, I think industry exposure to faculty is extremely important. And the more we bring faculty into industry or industry bodies or training programs or interactions even, the better it is, and the stronger the force it will become.
And also, if people like you or other members of the industry go across to educational institutions as faculty, can you imagine how much they would learn from people like you, right? Not just the brick and mortar of 2+2 or whatever it is, but there's just so many other aspects of growing up and becoming that aspect, that crossover of supporting faculty and actually being faculty, and supporting industry and actually being part of industry and part of growing up. I mean, it's just I don't know, it's just such a wonderful opportunity that we have. People like you are willing to spend time, effort, energy, money, creating that, and open minds to get people into industry and taking industry into. I think that would be just fantastic. It would just, and therefore also at some point in time, because no one person has the wherewithal to solve the problems. But also what we are looking at in the country, and Swapan had mentioned about our India, and I work a lot in very small towns and villages. The talent there is just incredible, right? The kind of thinking and the kind of community and the hunger for learning. That hunger for learning somehow in urban areas, of course it's there, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but there is this huge hunger for learning in the smaller towns. And that's where business can maybe go out and help put up schools or avenues for learning for people in smaller areas, where it's not in those terms lucrative, but it is very lucrative in the kind of talent that you will get. You might not get revenue.
Then in the long run, it is lucrative because you're building
Exactly.
that talent to create more talent, and it's always lucrative. So I think it needs to be looked at from that perspective.
That point of view, the just building of giving space for people to grow and learn, and then contribute to the community that they form and live in and create, making them better.
Absolutely.
I think it's wonderful. I think, you're talking about an ecosystem of learning, where it's not just children who are learning, but the people who are teaching them, who are helping them learn, are learning. And, I've often talked to several clients, and I call it exfoliation, which is shedding old skins and getting new ones. But, sadly, Arun and Sanjay, not many corporations do that. You'd be surprised at the kind of corporations that have scant time or attention for upgrading, for upskilling, for exfoliating skills of the people who work with them. And I'm not talking about the training departments of these companies, because training departments can only do that much. But I'm talking about, like Arun mentioned, extraneous factors coming into play. Someone in say, OA rooms getting a perspective from Sunjay Kapur, who's got nothing to do with hospitality or real estate, but who brings a certain perspective as a traveler, as a traveling businessman. So I think there is great room for tremendous cross-pollination. And I personally feel, and I'm known for saying the wrong things, and I personally feel we have a terrible report card as far as corporate India is concerned, as far as education is concerned. No, we do. It's a fact of the matter. I mean, I can count the number of corporate houses on my fingers who are deeply and actively involved in terms of education and in terms of continuous education. I would just leave you with your last thoughts. I do know that you're both extremely pressed for time, but just your last thoughts on how you can collaborate and how we can make a better bridge between business and education.
So you go ahead, you start.
Right. So I think, this conversation is a start. That's the point. I'm very happy that somebody has taken the initiative to have this kind of conversation, to put this thought process. And for me, that is the most important aspect: collaboration. Right? When you work together with one end of the helping of people becoming constructive, contributory. For me, that's important: constructive and contributory citizens of the community. Right? If that is not the goal of education, then there's something wrong. Right? And how does people like you, Sanjay, help wherever you are and whatever little that you can do? And like I said, everybody can't, nobody can. No one person can solve all these issues. Every one step, one collaboration, one citizen, one community that understands that constructive, contributory, learning how to learn with each other, learning from each other, right, is only going to make us go up the pattern, and also taking in the huge energy that has been unleashed by technology. We would be silly and stupid not to take on the might of technology with us going forward in the journey of learning, right? There's a lot to learn on the aspect of technology. There's many things happening there. And I'm also saying that, the tech ed is not really what I'm talking about. The technical education, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Education per se. And in it, use technology to take education forward, not make them two separate entities. That's what I would love to see. And people like you who are at the forefront of technology of various things. You have access to so many things. You have access to so many minds. You have access to so many avenues. Building them together as a community, I would love to see that going forward.
Great, all great points. And I just want to add to that. I think the key is collaboration. You rightly said it, the collaboration between industry and academia, and that's how I started the conversation. I think for me, what's really valuable from this conversation is the opportunity to, enhance the faculty, because that really is a key gap area across industry, across the spectrum of learning, whether it be in school, primary school, grad school, undergrad. I think faculty is the key gap area, and I think if we can do something in that from that aspect, I think we'll gain a lot. So I think collaborating between industry and academia, exposing academia to industry, exposing faculty to industry, all great sort of stuff that we can do going forward. So I hope we can continue these conversations, these dialogues, and see how we can actually execute what we're talking about.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you both for your time. I learned a lot. I learned a lot, as I always do for both of you whenever I spend time with you, and look forward to many more interesting interactions between all of us. Thank you for your time once again.
And thank you for this. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Swapan. Thanks.